What do most people think that is simple to deal with but is actually not? Write in the comments what you think about it. Enjoy the show. Story 1. I have to wonder how much research one should do before taking on a project for planting and maintaining a garden. My mom used to know so much about this stuff mainly because my grandfather was a farmer. There is so much about taking care of plants and trees that it takes multiple fields of study to understand even half of it. The internet these days, as bloated as it is, probably has some really good beginner guides to planting and maintenance for novices. Just remember, unless you're really lucky with local ecology, you're almost guaranteed to need to buy soil/compost. And if you want to eat what comes out of it, be very careful about the source of said soil and the water and any other stuff you use to feed said plants. We used to aerate the soil and use nitrogen-rich plant food for our garden. Go to a local nursery and see if you can find someone who's willing to give you some tips. Story 2. Legal immigration in the United States, including bringing a spouse after marriage. Everyone thinks it's easy and people should just do it the right way. In reality, it's confusing, convoluted, redundant, and ridiculously expensive, and often requires having a lawyer so things don't go missing during the process. Story 3. Having an alcoholic in the family. Seeing them recover and relapse repeatedly if they choose to continue drinking is hell. Al-Anon helps a lot, but knowing the next call you may get will be that they have died is harder. You will be called a monster by many people for not enabling them. Story 4. Changing a baby's poopy diaper. First, you have to remove the clothes. All the straps, buckles, and snaps can be complicated. Next, you have to remove the diaper. Now, you can't just take that sucker off. You have to open the tapes, open the front, lift the legs. You have to hold the feet gently but firmly, or you may end up with a poo-covered foot. After that, you need to pull out the diaper from underneath the butt. Next, you need to clean the butt. You have to use wipes from front to back to avoid giving them a UTI. You have to check all of the folds and creases to make sure not a speck is left. Some people rinse or wash the butt off with a spray of water at this point. This is actually a very good practice. After all this, you should put on a fresh diaper, redress them, and put them down so you can clean the surface you changed them on. Keep in mind, this is an ideal situation. Often you will have to deal with a blowout, a baby who pees while the diaper is off, a screaming baby, a baby with a rash, sometimes bloody rashes, or the aforementioned poo foot. Story 5. Parenting teenagers. Everyone gets the what to expect when you're expecting book, but they don't get the here's what teenager parenting is like at all. So they land into a massive shitstorm so often. I know people think it's difficult and nobody ever said parenting was easy. It's damn near impossible, and it is insanely hard. But I don't think people are ever fully aware of how fucking hard parenting even amazingly perfect teenagers can be. Parenting teenagers is a whole level of newness at an age where you can be an old dog and you gotta learn new tricks to parent. The anxiety of parenting teens hits like a liver punch at times. Story 6. Trying to get new-eyed when you've lost it all. Watched a documentary about homeless people and they all complained about it. Didn't realize how serious it is until going through it. I've been trying for weeks. I'm on my 3rd attempt at the moment, and Friday are gonna send me away again. I can't imagine trying to do this without an address. Story 7. Addictions. I have been sober over a year now, but I recall multiple conversations with people where they basically said, just don't do drugs. How hard is that? Or, you're choosing drugs over career/family/reputation. How hard can it be to abstain? How hard is it to not do something really? It takes zero effort to not do something. Story 8. Mental health in general, but people don't understand the degree to which PTSD fucks up your life. My capacity to handle any stress has been shot because my body became primed to see any increase in cortisol as life-threatening. I lost the ability to work, to leave the house, and only still have friends or relationship because my loved ones have been very, very forgiving and understanding. Things are getting better now, but it has taken a very long time. A ton of marijuana, benzos for a period, antipsychotics, and lots of counseling. Story 9. Clutter. Oh, I'll just give it away on Buy Nothing. It takes about a week per item to give stuff away on these groups. It's too good to throw away, I'll donate it. It takes even longer to find a charity that wants it, and there probably isn't one. Goodwill? You're going to stockpile it until you have enough donations to be worth loading up the car and heading up to Goodwill, and that stockpile will grow and you'll never actually get around to it. I'll be able to put this away properly once I rearrange my storage area. No, you won't. Rearranging is called churn, and it doesn't magically create any cubic feet of storage space that wasn't there before. Story 10. Just bullying in general. I had an experience I will never forget when I was in 5th grade. I remember like it was yesterday. It was on the weekend. I remember I had this friend who we will call K. She would always side with another friend of mine who we will call A and talk crap behind my back. I was aware but didn't want to say anything since I scared of losing them. We had arguments very often, mostly because my other friend S would always agree with me and say that K and A were acting like jerks, but S wasn't a saint herself. You see, one day, I got grounded and I couldn't see what my friends were saying in the group chat. The morning I got my phone back, I didn't get time to see the texts, and I went to school like normal when we were in music class. A said that S was actually talking crap about me as well. Of course I was heartbroken, but I also expected this. The argument. It was a normal Sunday. My mom was at work until I realized I had slept in. It was now around 11:30 a.m. I got my phone only to have a bunch of text messages from the group chat, and it seemed like K and A were arguing with S, but I noticed S wasn't responding, which only added more to their anger. I sent some texts saying things like, "Whoa, guys, chill," or "Let's not fight again." But that's when they started arguing with me, and of course, since I was so mad, I started arguing with them as well. Bad idea. They threatened me that they were going to gang up on me at school, and I threatened that I would bring to school in self-defense. That's when Kay got scared and stopped arguing. Turns out she had told the principal and sent screenshots of everything. The next day, I got pulled into the office. Eventually, Kay said what happened, and instead of Kay getting at least a lecture, she got off the hook with no warning. And I was the one who ended up with a bad record. I later went her a text after school asking like, "Why would you do that?" She said she was scared, but in reality, she just wanted some revenge. She was not scared at all. Moral of the story, think before you speak. Sometimes even self-defense can get you in trouble. Story 11, being single and undesirable. Most dating advice on Reddit is given by people who can't relate to the circumstances of the person they are advising and who downplay their situation just to justify their view of an ideal world where good people will thrive. Just be confident. Advice given by people who never needed to build inner confidence because they received it from other people. I can attest to the fact that building real confidence requires achieving accomplishments which is not easy at all and can't be faked. Just be yourself. Just have a good personality. Please choose one. How can I be myself if I have to change my personality? Just take a shower/have good hygiene. This is literally projection of bad qualities on the person you're supposedly trying to help. I'm sure 99% of people who struggle with singleness have their hygiene on check because it's an obvious factor. Just groom/just dress better. If dressing well was really a game changer, my friend who dresses like a homeless person wouldn't be swimming in pussy. Just don't be desperate. Desperation is the consequence, not the fucking cause. Just respect them. Again, like hygiene, it's a basic factor. Most people who fail to get laid aren't evil/disrespectful. Why the need to project so much? Just have a hobby. Picking up an hobby to get laid is just desperate, which contradicts the don't be desperate advice. Getting on a relationship depends solely on the cards you've been dealt at the start and how much you can potentially achieve with those cards. Call me an incel or whatever, but it's just the truth. Story 12, trying to get a contractor or handyman to do work on your house. Most don't answer the phone or return calls. The few that do probably won't show up when they say. If you somehow manage to find one that accepts the job, they may screw up the whole thing because many places don't have any actual certification that they are able to do what they say. Getting a GC license in many places is simply a matter of paying a fee. And then getting a second contractor to fix the mess is even harder because no one wants a more complicated job. Story 13, chronic illnesses that you can't see. They think just because you may look well that you aren't suffering or putting in so much effort into just existing. I had to leave work, and some of my extended family are the actual worst about it. They'll think because one day I can go out to a movie for 2-3 hours, I should be able to work a full-time, labor-intensive job for 8 hours a day. I can't even sit at a desk for 4 hours a day anymore. What they don't know, if that day out then results in the next day of me being bedbound and asleep pretty much the whole day from fatigue. That it takes me so long to leave the house because it takes hours to do meds, shower, get changed, etc. When your body is faked, I wouldn't wish my illnesses and disability on anyone, but sometimes I wish people would just try to get it. Story 14. Any creative adjacent field in a white-collar setting. Oh, you're a professional copywriter or designer. Well, this executive writes emails themselves and picked out the throw pillows in their gaudy house, so they believe they can do it better. They're going to stand over your shoulder for the next 75 mins and direct you to move things around on your screen because they don't know what they want, but they'll know when see it instead of giving you useful feedback on your work. And let me tell you, when your tech company launches that new website in a soul-crushing few weeks with copy and layout done by the CEO because you eventually gave in, people can tell. You spent 8 months on this project, but you're going to be embarrassed to list it in your portfolio. And when it doesn't perform well, because despite your education, experience, formal training, and proven track record of results, the CEO overruled your every informed decision, and everyone around them is too scared to say no. They're going to lay the blame squarely on you. Story 15, depression, anxieties of various varieties, chronic stress, PTSD, ADHD, autism, etc. If you don't have one, a lot of people tend to assume it's easy to deal with, or that you can just do X, Y, Z, and it works 100% of the time for everyone. Or my personal favorite, oh, everyone has that. I'm not saying it's necessarily malicious or like purposeful ignorance. Some people just don't know and simplify it based on their own experiences. Now, when therapists simplify or aren't prepared for neurodivergent brains or diminish stuff, that's a damn problem. Story 16, splitting checks and the logistics involved at a restaurant. God bless you if you're courteous enough to at least give the server a heads up as you order. This seemingly simple process can quickly become a nightmare when it's mentioned last second. Someone is inevitably in a hurry. People have moved around or ordered multiple different drinks or anything else. On top of that, now you have a stack of credit cards to run. That's 30 to 90 seconds each. I know how easy your iPad is to use, Janice. I assure you this software I have to trick into working is not like that. Story 17, other people. Like in customer service, hospitality industries. When dealing with the general public in a dynamic that subjugates oneself on a regular basis for an extensive period of time, one either A, becomes a Zen master, B, has their soul sucked from them and becomes a corporate zombie puppet, or C, turns into a villain. Story 18-1. Finding hobbies. It's not that easy when you randomly lost interest in everything you used to love when you were younger. I wish to pursue them. I gave them a try again only to feel like it's not meant for me and that I've lost my talent. 2. Having hobbies. Everything became so expensive. I can see myself trying something new in this economy. 3. Malaptative daydreaming. It distorts the way I see everyone around me, how I perceive myself, how I see the world. Story 19. Tenants being a small landlord in general. Congrats. You bought a house and fixed it up with your own hands and at great expense. But now you need to move and it doesn't make financial or logistical sense to sell it yet. Best to rent it out at a minor profit that goes to maintenance funds anyway. Inevitably, the tenants will trash it or want to leave the lease early, or a perfectly healthy tree will get knocked over in a storm. That maintenance budget doesn't even cover the maintenance. It's a fucking pain. Story 20. Someone with a mental illness, as in looking after or caring for them. People seem to think all it takes is to talk to them and they will listen and it will be better. If it was that simple, we wouldn't have a problem with mental illness. To give my personal example, my brother has a friend with schizoaffective disorder, and when he is in a manic phase, he is a confrontational dick to deal with. Like he will say things that he knows upsets you and will get honestly a little hostile to deal with, to describe it all honestly. This isn't the same as being violent. Now you have to learn how to channel all the emotions you're feeling in that moment, like fear and anger, and have to help him out while being conscious as to what is causing it. That ain't easy, folks. Part of the challenge of handling mental illness is the effect it has on you, not just them. Oh, it grinds you down. It's not something I wish on others, and something people shouldn't have to deal with, but they have to do so. I say this with all due respect to people with mental health issues, because I'm just speaking of the effect it has on caregivers. Story 21. Writing, editing, and publishing a novel. I meet so many people who think the act of slapping words together isn't impressive at all, and that anyone can do it with ease. As if authors are just lazy people who decided not to do anything else with their lives and now want money for something anyone can do. I think a big part of it is that a lot of people write for their jobs, copying reports or writing emails, and just assume writing a book is exactly the same and therefore easy when it's really a very different kind of writing. Don't get me wrong, I run into plenty of people that know how hard it is, usually because they've tried it or are trying themselves to be a writer. But I still encounter folks who react to what I do for a living with an attitude of, you wrote a 1.2 million word successful sci-fi trilogy that sold thousands? So what? Anyone can do that. Technically, yes, in the same way anyone can win an Olympic medal. Story 22. Keeping a small business open. No one argues that it's simple to start a business, but as soon as one closes, I see dozens of comments on what they could have done differently. Strangers with no experience in said industry think it would have been easy to stay open if owners did. Insert overly simple or bad idea. I see it all the time with so many places closing now, it's really sad. Story 23. Running an IT department. Most people seem to think you just sit around playing solitaire all day. Some even think you create problems so you can make it look like you're doing something important. Seriously, I had someone in a position of importance accuse us of sabotaging a PC that had important software on it that I actually took home over a weekend to fix so they had minimal downtime, and my staff wouldn't have to sweat about it. Let's see how they like shelling out tons of dollars for an outside agency to do it in their own good time, rather than have us one phone call away and who'll get to it within 30 minutes. When I retired, they fired my assistant, just took his keys and showed him the door. It was 6 months before they got somebody in there who understood what we had done well enough to take over. Story 24. This is fairly specific, but working as a graphic designer when a marketer or editor asks for something they think is a simple, quick change like, change out a paragraph with this new one that's a few lines shorter or longer. They always think it is just a small change that will only take a second, but they fail to release that it means I now have to reflow text in a multiple-page document that will take an hour, if not more, due to literally every page having to be adjusted. Same thing with a bunch of headshots in an agenda program. One person drops out, and now I have to adjust multiple pages. And if it's a booklet format, it can mean trying to add 4 or delete 4 pages so that the page count still works for a booklet. Story 25. Being a professional musician. People have said to me things like, Doja Cat kind of came out of nowhere, how'd she do that, and how can you do what she did? You're constantly doing at least 8 jobs for the pay of one less than minimum wage job most of the time. Oh, Mao. Story 26. These days, making a doctor's appointment. For 3 solid years, I've been unable to use my health insurance after the insurance companies took full advantage of some stuff the right did under Trump to kneecap Obamacare. Long, complicated explanation that I don't have time for at the moment, paired with tricks they were already pulling but have escalated x 10,000 BCs, the barriers to their greediest goals were removed. First, they intentionally make their website trash, difficult to use, provider list inaccurate, etc., in hopes you'll give up and not use your insurance or end up at a non-preferred provider they pay less for. Legit confirmed by a rep who was clearly on their way out when I stated that's what it felt like. The same way red states brag openly about making the website's sign-up process for unemployment/Medicaid /any social service barely functional BCS. It saves them so much dollar due to most folks being unable to sign up BCs of that intentional barrier. So, I've spent years scouring the provider list. Most info incorrect, so track down real info. Call to inquire if they are indeed a provider. They confirm, but bill states otherwise. Insurance sites can't guarantee info on our site is current, and our preferred providers change all the time, so call ahead to confirm with them before you go. I did. It's just that you're now making doctors' offices jump through 100 hoops for every tiny thing that used to be a streamlined cut and dry process. So now none of them know what the hell is going on. BCS, you are lying to both the patients and the doctors, and now 80% of their job is jumping through these hoops with very little time for actually quality healthcare in any conceivable fashion. Also barely paying them what ends contracted to pay, so all the private practices are unable to stay afloat and forced to sell to the investment firms your INS company is affiliated with, veiled under 80 layers of obfuscation for plausible deniability, which in turn leads to all our healthcare being private equity controlled. I've also spent endless hours just calling every office in my area to check if they service my policy, but no one has any appointments, or the appointment wait list is several months out no matter how time-sensitive the issue is. By the time I finally find care, my kids will have aged off my health insurance. Prior to those Obamacare changes and the other regulations that were gutted, the process was simple and easy, cut and dry, easy access to appointments, and 800 other negative changes that have abruptly and significantly altered the quality of life of my household. And pose any, why is XYZ so much worse all of a sudden? It will have the same root cause. Regulations/laws/rules being gutted, and regulatory bodies lined with ghouls from the industries meant to be regulated years ago has now finally caught up to us in every facet of existence all at once. Story 27. For me, dating or really just finding someone to date, I found it especially helpful for me to acknowledge that I'd rather have a fantastic platonic female friend who genuinely inspires me than a terrible girlfriend who only holds back my own potential. Plus, you can potentially have multiple of the former. At any rate, I'm going to look into volunteering at a somewhat nearby natural history museum, if only to meet people with similar interests in general. All I know is that dating is a realm where haste makes waste is absolutely true. You cannot rush this without potentially severe consequences, whether that's emotionally, financially, or who knows what else. Story 28. I know a guy who has been declared dead by the Social Security office. You would think this would be easy to fix, but it is not. His wife passed away and he went down in person to give them the paperwork and notify them. Somehow he got declared dead and they cut off all his benefits. He went down there in person and told them he was alive. They said there was nothing they could do. He literally put his driver's license down on the counter and looked at the person and was like, clearly this is me and I'm obviously very much alive. I need my benefits. They still repeated that there was nothing they could do. Again, you'd think this would be simple to deal with, but he had to contact the senator's office and get them involved in order to be declared undead. Now the Social Security office has declared him dead again. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.